Good morning, folks. Happy Monday. Welcome to the Rangers Reviews morning briefing on Monday, the 9th of May. I'm Joshua Barry, delighted to be joined by Johnny McFarlane, not from your usual haunt. Johnny, tell us where you are.
Yeah, I'm from a holiday boat hole in Carnoustie. I've
Okay.
come away for the night with my wife. So that doesn't mean that I am not here for you, Josh, to help you with our Rangers chat and to provide some clarity and light to the discussion. Derek's on holiday, basically. So
Absolutely.
I'm forced into it.
Great. Well, good to have you as ever. And excitingly, Johnny, as regular viewers will see on our screen, we actually have a new sponsor today. A new sponsor, which is called One Football. Now, One Football, you should be seeing a neat little video on your screen, folks, is a really one-stop shop for all your football needs. If you want live scores, if you want news, if you want lineups, if you're sitting at the game and you want to check what the scores are in other games. If you're not at Ibrox for whatever reason and you want to keep up to date with it, as you can see, you can get absolutely everything you need at over on the app, which is free to download. You can see there Guy Neville takes a nice little dig at Celtic for the atmosphere. You can get everything from that, Johnny, up until the lineups. Isn't that right?
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic app, mate, and we're delighted to have this sponsor. It's one of the most popular football apps out there. So go onto your app store and download it now. That's my recommendation.
Yeah, absolutely. The link is in the description, folks, so do go check that out. Right, Johnny, let's get right into the football then. Yesterday, pretty routine win for Rangers yesterday against Dundee United. Just looking at the statistics there, and Dundee United's XG was 0.05, so they win that game on average 0 times out of 100, and Rangers win it 97. I was there, Johnny. It was a continuation of the party atmosphere from Thursday, as one might expect. John Lundstrom's song was getting sung before and after the game, but important to keep the wins going and important to keep the momentum going, wasn't
it? Yes, it was. I'm giving you a really dodgy angle as I go for my cup of tea there. It was a strange game, obviously, because it had the feeling of a pre-season game, which was unusual based on the intensity that we've seen so far this season. But I thought it was an entertaining game to watch. Rangers completely dominated it. Stephen Davis, I thought, was excellent in the midfield, and the young players that came in, I think, really put forward a case for them being a big part of the inevitable summer rebuild. Obviously, given the amount of excitement that there's been about the Europa League, the idea of a change in the summer has kind of gone a bit quiet, but regardless, there will be major change in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you look at the likes of Leon King, who strolled through the game, you look at the likes of Alex Lowry, it's time for Rangers to really make sure that pathway is in place for those kind of players.
Yeah.
And that they are part of the squad next season. So for me, to give you an example, Leon King needs to be one of the 4 central defenders that Rangers are using next year.
Yeah.
And if that means Leon Balogun has to go or Philip Helander has to go, they have to make a move in that regard to ensure that there is a space for him. And that may be painful because it may be a player that the fans like, maybe a player that's high quality, but there does need to be an opportunity for a lad like that with the talent that he has to actually showcase what he can do and to develop at Rangers.
Mm-hmm.
So that for me was the standout. Obviously, a couple of good goals as well. A very obvious penalty, Joshua, no doubt about that. Actually, I agree with the pundits on Sports Scene last night who were saying they thought it could have been even a red card. I thought it was a wild challenge by Seagrace.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously the second was just a fantastic finish by Ahmad, who I thought came on and looked really sparkling.
Mm-hmm. And just a very valued contribution here from regular contribution about our app, One Football, saying it is even quicker than the TV. So that is a good recommendation of how up to date it is. So thanks for that, CGM. That's some nice free advertising for us there. I think you're right, Johnny. The youngsters were the main takeaway. I thought Leon King was excellent. I think you even see that with him going up to left back in the second half. Dealt with his duels well, and he passes the ball at the back really well. And we've seen that a little bit against St Mirren away from home. You know, he can come inside onto his right foot and kind of clip it out to Tavernier on the right flank, which is normally the direction that Rangers want to get the ball at the pitch. for me, I thought the standout, as always, is Alex Lowry, because his first touch, I mean, I don't know if anyone else thinks this, but for me, the most impressive thing about Alex Lowry is his first touch, because his first touch always gets him away from his opponent. He tries things, and he just seems so composed. And I mean, we spoke to him, Jonny, in the press conference after the game, and he's just unbelievably relaxed all the time. And as we've said before, I think you need that as a creative player at Ibrox, and you need to have that confidence to go and try things. And you know, if you're speaking about Leon King having to be one of the 4 centre backs, you've got to be looking at Lowry getting a lot more minutes next season, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the through ball that he played to Ahmad that was ruled offside was a thing of beauty.
Yeah,
incredible vision, and that showcased what this lad can do. He's got the ability to sprinkle stardust around Ibrox, and it's not very often you see that. Scotland has not got a good record at producing high quality technical talents. There's a handful in the last 10 or 15 years, and quite often those guys that have come through haven't really fulfilled their potential. I'm thinking about people like Barry Mackay, like Ryan Gold, very, very skillful, very, very good technical players, but perhaps haven't quite reached their full potential. Alex Lowry, we've got to hope, is the guy that steps out of that and really, really makes a name for himself. Billy Gilmore's another one, obviously, although he's a deeper lying creative player, both coming through the Rangers Academy, of course. So Lowry has to be part of the conversation next season. It's just obvious, Joshua. It's going to be very, very difficult for him because there is a lot of quality there, and that won't change next season. But Ryan Kent's got a year left on his contract. Joe Aribo's got a year left on his contract. There's going to be stick or twist moves being made. There's no doubt about it. Perhaps one of those two will sign a new deal. I don't think they will. And that would change things. But there will be opportunities. And I think it's about Giovanni van Bronckhorst putting the faith into him. And I think he'll do that. I really do. Dutch managers have traditionally got the sense of bringing through youth into the team, and they know what that gives you over the long term. We've seen it at many of their top clubs. It's part of their culture in terms of football, and I hope that that's something that continues, because it's clear to me that this needs to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jonny Knox saying the future is bright, the future is Lowry, which I think is very, very true indeed. And also a word as well, I think, for Charlie McCann and Adam Devine, both of whom I thought did really well. I thought McCann used the ball well and looked forward. He didn't just play safe passes. He tried to play over Dundee United. And I thought Devine, some of his runs beyond were really well timed, and he was unfortunate to not be found on a couple of occasions. I'd like to talk about Amad Diallo, if that's okay, Jonny. And
there's a shock. I wonder what his stats bomb radar looks like. I bet he is pretty impressive.
Fantastic. I was actually going to look for it this morning, but I'll do it after this.
Yeah.
A lot of people getting in touch to speak about Aldo and Peter in particular, to speak about Amad. Stevie Clifford, friend of the show and contributor to the website, actually asked the manager about this at full time. Could you see him coming back for next season? Now, Amad Diallo, obviously, when he came in, I think some people, nominally me, got very excited, and you can see his technical quality yesterday. And I think what was impressive yesterday, Jonny, was that he took a couple of big tackles early on. And Van Bronckhorst, you rarely see Van Bronckhorst really animated on the touchline. And he was furious yesterday because he obviously felt that it was a little bit deliberate to just try and hit him. Especially, I think on both occasions, the ball had gone out of play. But Diallo, he didn't kind of shirk that. I think that only riled him up further. Some of his touches were fantastic. It seems like he's now adjusted to Scottish football, and you can see his technical quality when he goes at players one-on-one. It's absolutely ridiculous. And in a way, it just feels like a shame it's taken until now for that to come through. If there was an opportunity, I think, for him to come back, I think certainly after yesterday, a lot of people would be very open to that possibility.
Yeah, I've got to say, I agree with you on that, Josh. I think he's taken his time, his sweet time, to really adapt to life at Rangers. Scottish football is always going to be a tough one for a man of his frame. Certainly at the moment. What is he, 19? So he'll obviously fill out. There's no doubt about that, and the club will work on that, whether it be Manchester United or someone else. But there's clearly incredible talent there. Now, there was a long ball that he picked up just inside his own half. He took it down unbelievable velvet touch.
Yeah.
And then he knocks it past the closing defender and just runs at the Dundee United defence. It was an electric bit of skill, an electric bit of wing play, really exciting. And I have to say, I thought he took his goal brilliantly as well. He lofted the finish really, really nicely into the roof of the net. Anything other than that sort of little sort of pitching wedge shot, and Seatgrease is getting that. We saw Seatgrease throughout the game, was excellent, made a number of good saves. And that was an underrated finish. It wasn't as easy as it looked. You see players all the time hitting the keeper in that spot. So I give him real credit for that. It was a tidy finish. But just in general, Joshua, I think he's a player that I'm quite certain that when you produce the Stats Bombs numbers that of his whole season at Rangers and the SPFL, it'll look pretty good. Yeah. Because he's very, very dangerous. The problem that he's got is it's the physicality element of Scottish football. And people sort of look at him and say, does he have the heart? You know, is he the guy you want to turn to when things are going badly? And that's what we saw against Celtic in the 3-0 defeat at Parkhead. He just he wasn't the guy to turn to pull you out of a hole. But he's 19, you've got to expect that. And that's why I think having had this half season, it wouldn't be the worst thing to get him back again for next season. Now, whether or not Manchester United will agree with that or not, they've got a new manager coming in who, again, has shown time and again over his tenure at Ajax that he wants to promote young players and give them an opportunity. I don't think Ahmad's ready for Manchester United. That's he's nowhere near that. I'd be amazed. I'd be shocked if he was considered a first teamer next season for United. So he will go out somewhere, I'm pretty sure, but it's whether or not they will see Rangers as the right fit, because let's face it, it's hard to get into the Rangers first team. He's not played that much, and they might want him to go somewhere where he's going to play 50, 60 games a season and really sharpen himself up.
But I think what you would say of yesterday is as Ross was saying there, and as in the comments, and as you said, Johnny, is he does look to have adapted. He took the challenge as well, and I think 1v1 you can see just how electric he is. And I think the Celtic Park game, in hindsight, he's a little bit of a scapegoat for that, because I think you could look at a number of other first team players who'd played a number of those games and say that they were the ones that needed to slow the tide of the game, get the ball at the pitch. You know, Ahmad had a confusing defensive role in that game, and he's obviously a player that will take some maturing in that regards. But I thought it was good to see him get his goal. It's good to see that he's not checked out. It would have been easy for him, Johnny, to move to a new country, to check out, to not be interested. But I don't think he's done that whatsoever. I think you've seen that. I think I know social media isn't always the best barometer of how these things work, but I think you can see with his celebrations after the game, at Hampden, I think he really enjoys being here, and I think he has enjoyed being here, and I think he's bought into the club, and I think that's important. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in that regard. Mark Lawson gets in touch to ask about Kemar Roof's injury status now. The manager was speaking about this in the post-match press conference yesterday. He said basically he's doing everything he can to be ready, which makes it sound, Johnny, like it's a bit touch and go. I think what you would say, Aaron Ramsey looked pretty fresh yesterday and had a good game, which is obviously a positive. Certainly everything's geared towards this Europa League final, and to have the option of bringing someone like Aaron Ramsey onto the pitch if you need a goal is I think very valuable. But I think everyone's just got to have everything crossed that Kemar Roof will be fit and ready. Although, for me, what you would say about that home game is that I'd be more concerned in a way if Rangers had 5 games to win the league and they needed to break down 5 teams if they didn't have Kemar Roof, compared to a one-off game where it's going to be transitional. There's going to be space, and maybe their most likely route to a goal is, as we've seen on last Thursday night, Kent into Tavernier in the break. What do you think? Obviously, it would be great to have him involved, but I don't know if I'm as dependent on Roof being there for Rangers to be successful, if you know what I mean.
No, I totally agree with you, Josh. That's one of the most impressive things about this Europa League run, is that Giovanni Van Bronckhorst has found a way without too much stress to turn a team without strikers into a winning team. You would want Kemar Roof, there's no doubt about it. You would give your eye teeth to make sure that he's there, because he will give you that deadly calm in front of goal when the chance presents itself. And there's no doubt to me that Rangers are diminished if they don't play Roof or Alfredo Morelos. But we've seen what they can do without these two guys. There's still a goal threat. Fashion Sakala's still there. You've still got Ryan Kent there who can get on the end of things. James Tavernier's the top scorer in the Europa League.
Yeah.
So there's no doubt that Rangers are still threatening without these two. But absolutely you want Kemar Roofe back, mate. There's just no doubt about it. He gives you something completely different to what these guys have. And you want to be as strong as you possibly can be. The remaining games in the Premiership, to be honest, Joshua, it's almost nobody really cares. You know, it's not about really the results as much as the performances, as much as keeping certain players ticking over and having other players introduced into the team to show what they can do.
Yeah,
it's a bit like, you know, football. I was thinking, like, the other day watching the game, it was a bit like one of these football manager games where you're wanting to rest players and you bring in all these young players because you're not really that bored, but they all sort of score 7.5 and above, and you're quite delighted that, well, maybe bring this boy in next season or whatever. Because there was so much change, and it was really, you've got to say, pretty smooth.
Yeah,
they still look very good. But Dundee United are a top 6 side, and they're there for a reason. They're a difficult team. They beat Rangers at the start of the season at Tannadice. It was a strange game. Rangers had very, very little impact on that game going forward.
Yeah.
So it shows you that they've got something about them. And they were completely dominated, and they barely had any opportunity. I think there was 3 sort of wild shots, all from range. Yeah. And that was as close as Dundee United got. And what impressed me as well, Joshua, maybe you could kind of teach me a little bit about this, because I was finding it a little bit strange. Despite the fact Dundee United offered no threat going forwards and were sitting in a low block, Rangers kept finding space in behind them. How did that even happen? You get a much better sense of it watching it on at the ground.
Well, they were a 5-3-2, so they had, obviously Rangers normally had a 2v1 on either side, but then they actually sat relatively high up the pitch, and I think the reason they did that was because they knew that Scott Arfield isn't, you know, the quick. He's not uncatchable if he goes over the top, and obviously then if you set your line if you set your line higher, you're not as close to the goal, but then also you condense the space that Rangers have to work in to get the ball up the pitch. And I think it worked relatively well, but I think what Rangers did to combat that, and what they've not always done for me this season, Johnny, is they moved the ball quickly and they moved it with tempo. I think Stephen Davis, who will come to touch on in a second, I think he helped playing slightly higher up the pitch in the first half because of the intensity with which he moved the ball. I think Scott Wright came and fielded the pitch well. Inside the pitch well, sorry. But yeah, I think United were trying to condense the space. And on another day against Rangers, I think that works well if Rangers go side to side and whatever. But the fullbacks are freed up, which gives options. And I think ultimately Rangers should have probably won by 3. Certainly the XG was closer to 3 than 2. Yeah. The only other point I wanted to make on that, Johnny, was I have this terrible feeling that, you know, looking back on, you'll remember when Harry Kane was rushed back for the Champions League final and Spurs had played well to get to that point. They'd played without a striker, but it had worked, and he wasn't really fully fit, and the balance of the team didn't look great. And part of me does worry with Kemar Roofe. If he plays, then you have to take out one of Joe Repo and Glenn Kamara. You know, there's certainly, I think, more discussion to be had around that, but we won't dive into that just now because I've got another point for you from Jim, who I had the pleasure of having a nice chat with before the game yesterday. Up in Jim was sitting in the members' suite. And he was, speaking about Stephen Davis. Now, Stephen Davis, for me yesterday, Johnny, strolled it as he always does. I thought he was really good higher up the pitch, rolling back the years. I tweeted out, I think it was the highest he played since his second debut at Rangers, when he played quite high up the pitch against, I think it was St Mirren in a 4-0 win. I think Rangers had something like 4 penalties in that day. Is there a discussion to give Stephen Davis another year in his contract and to allow him to play a bit part role?
Oh, 100%. I'm fully committed to the idea of giving Stephen Davis a new contract. I think it has to happen. Now, I'm aware that might fly in the face of what I said earlier about making sure that there's a pathway for those young players. Sometimes there has to be painful decisions made. But I just think that Stephen Davis is essential to have around in terms of the ability to, number one, play the ball quickly, which is something that Rangers really lack at times if they're playing a low block. Number two is experience and his professionalism around the club, which is invaluable. And I still think if you're talking about Stephen Davis at 38, he can contribute on that field. It doesn't have to be 30 games. It can be 15 games. But it's a no-brainer for me. I think he should have played a little bit more than he has. I know he's had problems with injuries since Gio came in, but I think Gio started to appreciate over the last 4 or 5 weeks just what Stephen Davis gives you. And that's the great thing about Gio. He's not fixed in his ideas, is he? He seems to evolve. He's constantly evolving what he's doing. He's constantly evolving how he sees the squad. And that's so refreshing because we're in a world of football ideologues now. And it's become almost completely trendy to be a football ideologue. You know, Klopp's an ideologue, Guardiola's an ideologue, and therefore all the young coaches coming through, they've got their idea, their fixed idea. You see it to some extent in Scotland with Ange Postecoglou. He's got an absolutely fixed idea how he wants to play. And that's fine, and that works to some extent, especially at the high level, because you've got the best quality players. But I think in the hurly-burly of Scottish football, in my lifetime, pragmatism has always been what gets you through and over the longer term. Walter Smith was a great pragmatist. Would quite happily tear up his plan and go for something different if he thought that it would get him the result. And Giovanni Van Bronckhorst has been very, very impressive in that regard. He's not got fixed ideas. That's clear, and he's open to things changing in front of him, which has been unusual in recent years. It must be said.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually last point listening to a video with Mikel Arteta on Arsenal Twitter, and he was speaking about that, about having to adapt to the opposition and how difficult it is when you don't know what the opposition is going to do. And I think it's very relevant. Right, we'll leave it there, Johnny. We'll let you get back to your little jaunt in Fife.
Thanks, man.
A reminder to download our OneFootball app, but also, folks, to take advantage, as you can see at the bottom of our screen, of our deal at the Rangers Review, just £3 for 3 months. I've just put the link in the subscription. If you watch us every day, do go and support us by signing up. Just £1 a month. You get all our coverage from Seville, where we'll be this time next week, Johnny, which I'm very much looking forward to, but also all the build-up to it, all the reaction to it, and the Scottish Cup final as well. And remember, if you're watching on YouTube, hit the notification bell, so you'll get all our videos, not just in the morning, but also in the evening when we're going live in sunny Spain next week. So thank you very much to all of you who joined us. Thanks, Johnny, for tuning in, and we'll speak to you tomorrow.